he was able to convert deserted land into grassland just by focusing on the soil, right? And using his horses, donkeys, and goats to do that. It's crazy. Now he has 30,000 acres. It does take massive land to change the microclimate. Millions of acres around his ranch that when you see him teach, you can see rainfall coming on his land alone. It's because he is able to change and affect the micro.
Welcome to After Hours with Dr. Sigaloff, where he can share ideas and thoughts with you. He gets to the heart of the issue so that you can find the truth. The views and opinions expressed are his and do not represent the U.S. Army, DoD, nor the U.S. government. Dr. Sigaloff was either off duty or on approved leave, and Dr. Sigaloff was not in uniform at the time of recording. Now, to Dr. Sigaloff.
Thank you for joining us again. First, I want to thank all my Patreon supporters. I want to thank Shell Pace at the $50 level, Sam and Angela Shelkey at the 2020 level. We have the Plandemic Reprimando at $17.76. We have Ty, Charles, Tinfoil, Stanley, Dr. Anna, who was a guest on this show, Frank, Brian. We have Kevin Alanos, who made his own level at $10. We have the Refine Not Burn level at $5 with Linda, Emmy, Joe, Pat and Bev, PJ, Rebecca, Marcus, Elizabeth, Dawn, Jennifer, and then our lowest tier at $1 a month, Courage is Contagious. We have Amanda, Jay, Spetsnasty, Durrell, Susan, BB Keen, also a previous guest, and Rick. But today I have a very special guest for you. Two special guests for you. So one is military. He's still active duty right now. He's about to get out. He's transitioning over. And then his battle buddy, if you will, not currently in the military. I don't know if he was, but he is an entrepreneur and he has experience in this field. And the reason we're talking about this is, as you know, I think carnivore is the best way for humans to eat, or carnivore adjacent, where you're eating some fruit, but we're getting vegetables out of the mix. Now, Gil De Leon and Jason Martin, they are doing this project called Project REGEN, where it's regenerative farming. They're teaching people how to become regenerative farmers so that we can use the land, we can become less dependent on others and more self-sufficient. And we'll have Gil on later because he's done some other amazing things in the military, help protecting a similar fight to what I'm going through. But Gil, Jason, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. And thank you for having us, Sam. Absolutely.
So tell us a bit about your project. Tell us what this involves and what you're doing.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And first, I'd like to talk about, since we're talking about regenerative agriculture, what is regenerative agriculture? And if you don't mind, I'd talk about that first before we talk about Operation REGEN or Project REGEN or Mission REGEN. So regenerative agriculture is an approach to farming that aims to enhance soil health and biodiversity, right? While improving the ecosystem services and reducing negative environmental impacts. And this is achieved through practices such as crop rotation, cover cropping, reduced tillage, the integration of several protein species, right? And regenerative agriculture seeks to create resilient farming systems that can adapt to changing environment conditions and provide sustainable food for the future generations. So that's what regenerative agriculture is. And now going to Operation REGEN, and if you look at our current crisis, right, there's a lot of strategic crisis where old ranchers, 60, 70-year-olds can't retire because there's no replacement, right? And we don't have enough people and manning to man these ranches and farms to restore or move the line to certification. In order to do that, we have to equip and man and provide the resources for these ranches. But how do you do that if people are not experienced? And I think the best way to do that is to attract talented, seasoned veterans that have the management experience, the leadership experience, and all we gotta do is teach them how to spell cow and how to regenerate soil through regenerative practices, right? And I think veterans are the best fit. Anything you want to add, Jason, to that?
No, I think that really captures what we're focusing on very specifically. I think there's a lot of whys behind all of those things. And I think there's a larger context in which we're engaging in that way. And it's a lot to unpack at the end of the day. I think probably even the concept of it would would propose the question of how is it that we're somehow separated from all of our food system? I think probably in the history of humanity, it would have been a peculiar thing that we're trying to do, because it would have assumed that we are very disconnected from all of our food system. So yes, we are, but there are certainly many, many implications and underpinnings of why we're even in such a state as this. And it's going to point well beyond any particular activity to a change in the way that humans engage their own ecology and understand their place in a natural world and the exchange and interdependence of the same.
I agree. And Jason is right? And he said ecology, and I think and it leads to a point of theology, right? It plays a huge role in regenerative agriculture in several ways by promoting soil health, biodiversity, ecosystems, and be responsible through stewardship of the earth, right? It's humans cannot be excluded. There's an interconnectedness that we cannot ignore. And Jason hit it on the head, theology, ecology, and it's all one thing. And I think that's what drives us to move forward.
Yeah, I think this is probably the best way to be a good steward of the earth, so that we're not leaving a mess behind for our great grandkids, but we're leaving a sustainable future.
And I agree. And if you look at the USDA, they're dumping millions of dollars, right? However, they're dumping millions of dollars, but who's going to obtain and secure it and move the line at the up tempo and speed that the government wants us to do? And I think the best people who can do that are veterans, because we can operate with stress, right? Veterans fit. They possess unique skill sets and experience that can be valuable to the field of regenerative agriculture. These skills include, strong work ethic, adaptability, leadership, problem solving, resilience. Veterans can apply these skills to help regenerative agriculture promote sustainability and contribute to food security. Now, let's talk about food security for a second. As a 17-year-old combat veteran, security is a big thing for me. Now, if we don't have enough food to grow and produce, what does that say about our agricultural system? It's weak, it's vulnerable, and it can cause, our outside influences to exploit that. So we got to find ways to grow our food systems. So how do we grow our food systems if our land is not collaborating? Easy, through regenerative practices. But how do we do that? We attract the youth that want to do this, and we attract veterans that already have the skill sets. We just got to teach them how to spell soil, spell cow. We give them the skill sets. And our ranch, the brothers, the founders of Life Under the Sun, Operation REGEN, can achieve that. Now, here's the disclaimer. We are new at this. We're amateurs, but we have a lot of experiences in other industries, right? Jason and Josh got extensive experiences in building teams and businesses, right? I got experience in management and leadership and how to bring teams together, just as Jason. Combine those skill sets, and it's easy to teach soil health, right? We can teach as we train. Like I'm learning myself, Jason's learning himself. It makes no sense for us to become experts then teach. We can teach as we grow, because that's the only way we're going to move the line of desertification at the speed that the government wants us to do it. And I think that's how we can achieve the strategic goals of the current crisis of agriculture.
And I think it's an exciting time in some respects. Anytime, ironically enough, we find that these practices are in a emerging market. If we think about markets, and so you're in something new. And currently, I can tell you, all the markets that deal in regenerative meats don't have enough supply for the demand. They are sold out regularly. The demand is way higher than the current supply. So I think just from a standpoint of opportunities and a time when people don't understand these practices very well. So it's a time that you can go and learn very quickly and compete in a very meaningful way whilst doing good and creating food security. These things have are becoming more and more increasingly important to people, particularly with the propagation of annuals and their lack of nutrition that they're able to provide, particularly on a global scale. All the things that were promised that would happen from these forms of agriculture have not happened, and quite the opposite has. And so it's kind of brought us to this crisis. But I think there are many of opportunities there, and ones that offer a better qualitative life. And so really seeking that opportunity for anybody and everybody, because the need is great enough that there is a place for them.
What's interesting is you have this perfect market of workforce because there's approximately 8,000, maybe 9,000, somewhere in that range of service members. And, to maybe take 10% of them or 1% of them that would want to do this, that were kicked out of the military because they wouldn't get the shot. Right. And so that seems like that is a perfect opportunity for those individuals. If they want to look into this, this is a great way to learn about it, because this isn't, let's say you've never had any farming before, ranching, that's fine. You don't need to. You use problem solving ability to figure out what's best for your land, not for all lands everywhere, but for your land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's a good point, Sam. That's a really good point about that, because you're right. Really, what you're doing is evaluating a ecosystem and the ways that you're going to engage to promote its good. But it's really vital that you're able to observe all of those things. So people who are able to and trained to make lots of observations and then strategic moves in light of it to cause a desired effect and not undesired effects, to mitigate those as much as possible, which we're talking about military training very specifically, to be applied outdoors, they're actually way ahead, to be honest, because those are skills that take much longer to hone in. You're just applying them to a new context.
That's right. And he said context, right, which is the first principle of soil health. It's context. And once you have a rich, diverse context, you can literally catapult the journey of regeneration. And to Jason's point, he's attracting seasoned veterans that has a skill set already. And now when we change or change your mindset to holistic management, man, they all already can operate in any agriculture position on the first day.
Yeah, I reached out to you before this whole thing, and I asked for some homework. And one book that I read was called Holistic Management, A Common Sense Revolution to Restore Our Environment by Alan Savory. And this is the 3rd edition, so he's revamped it a few times. And what's incredible about this is what he's figured out. He's gone down to the molecular level and to the space view as high as you can. And that's the kind of problem solving that's needed for this. So anybody who loves complex problems, this is the field for you. Okay, he's got this idea that if I have a sheep and I allow it to graze on this land for 1 day, that's one day of sheep grazing. If I have 2 sheep on there for 1 day, that's 2 days. Okay, well, how do I get that right mix of rest and grazing so I don't get overgrazed, but then I don't overrest either, and I move to the different paddocks so that I can move into the next one, and then the ground actually produces more for you next year.
That's right. And which is great, because now you're talking about observation, right? So now you're not prescriptive, you're not operating in typical silos. Now you can foster human intelligence, natural intelligence, and lead your management through observation, right? And that's what Alan Savory keeps talking about. Like, we can't be prescriptive on a land that is not prescriptive, right? That's how humans destroyed nature. And that's why we have huge ecological disasters, right? So we got to collaborate with our land. We got to respect our land, like Alan Savory talks about, and just listen to what they're trying to tell us and just enhance it. And that's what Jason and Martin is all about. And that's why it ties really well to theology, right?
It does. It's talking about humans and what we think about ourselves and our place in this world. Now, that would be where we start with the I, right? But the reality is we share this world with many creatures and a great and abundant diversity, a diversity that we have killed and we're going through a current 6th grade extinction at a rate that's alarming. I mean, just to be frank, Sam, I've come to a point where I have become awakened to these things in such a way that I can't believe it's not the central thing everyone is talking and acting towards right now. which does make it a time of great urgency in many respects. I think there's enough of what is agreed on by scientists and by the evaluation of where we are that we can surely start a very, very serious agrarian conversation about what it means for us as humans and what it means to come back to a place of interdependence on the natural world and to understand our place, which will oftentimes be a place of limit, a place not of unlimited realization of everything I ever wanted on terms that are given to me in marketing, but a different evaluation of the value of our lives and our place in this world and what seeking good actually looks like. This is where the agrarian conversation centrally comes, because righteousness will very much be defined by, terms such as who has the land? Is the land providing for everybody? Who's working that land? And is it providing life and abundance for those who are all a part of this cycle? That's what the agrarian conversation goes to. And those aren't much topics that a normative human, 4 out of 5, which in the United States lives in a city, has much of a context about, just to be frank. And so there is a need to reinforce these hinterlands who have always provided for the city and the people. And so we're really focusing in on this and taking back that engagement between the land of a region and the people of the region and the exchange that can be had there. So, and that's what I mean by there are many more underpinnings, and it's expansive. When that is your vision, who is interested in what and how does it move forward, and how can we facilitate, support, and uphold it to the good of everyone is the only question any of us should be asking right now.
Right. And, I have a Christian background and I have some Jewish heritage. And, often Jews are thought of as great businessmen. They're very good at business. And the reason they're so good at business is because they learn in their religion, same with the Christian religion, is that when you make another of God's children's lives better, so whatever skill or service or whatever it is or whatever product you have that makes someone else's life better, you get rewarded with money. And money is a spiritual gift, not a physical gift. And what's really interesting is in Hebrew, the word for blood is the same as the word for money. And that's probably why the love of money, not money, but the love of money is the root of all evil, because you'll squeeze people to get their blood out of them, to get their money out of them. But what you're doing is, if you become, let's say, a regenerative agriculturist in your neighborhood or in your area, you are now an upstanding citizen who is providing for the basic necessities of people in your area.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, go ahead, Jason. Yeah, and you're right. And it takes, and the regenerative agriculture movement has been going on for 4 years. However, it's been going on for generations. But now with this new, marketing and social media, it's now it reaches more people. We're doing things that we've been doing, but now we can reach people farther and faster now than we could do 20 years ago, right? And you can see all this agency, Soil Academy, on this thing at Alan Savory, Soil Regen, Soil for Climate. There's a lot of agencies and entities promoting this because it's going to take that much people to restore a land. I mean, it took billions of people to destroy a land over generations. It's going to take a lot more people. And we're just a small piece. We're just trying to contribute to our land, and we're just a small team. We need more, right? And that's part of our vision as well, to unite independent ranchers and farmers under this umbrella called Life Under the Sun, because we're going to include everybody, right? There's no elitist here. As we get funds, we're going to help. And Jess can talk about that on Life Under the Sun, but it's powerful.
Because the reality is that our food costs are going to go up extremely. Be aware of that. That's a fact. Matter of fact, we currently pay less for our food than probably any human in the history of the world. And that has come at a great cost. And that's a fact. Go look them up. we pay and work less for our food than any human that's ever existed. It's easy. And the quality of that food has been diminished. But I'm going to say this. In order to do that, you have to go to a particular scale that now takes food production out of the hands of the people and in the hands of few, because they are at a scale that can't be competed with. And that scale is failing. We've realized that there are limits to that scale, and the limits are the natural resources of this earth. There are limits, and it's failed. And so it has to go the other way. Food production has to come back into the hands of the regions that are consuming those foods. And we have to close loops, waste loops that come back and work into building soil and compost unto greater fertility, under greater abundance, under greater sustainability of the amount of life that can be provided for off of those lands. Closing these loops become vital to us. Currently we throw away half the food produced for us. Half. And it's so cheap that it's not even valuable to us. We will just throw it away with a world that's dying of starvation. It's the whole concept. We have to change those categories.
So I want to do devil's advocate real. Go ahead, Gil. Sorry, I'll come back to.
No, you go ahead. I love playing devil's advocate. Let's do it.
Okay, so I'm going to do devil's advocate here. I know the answer, and this is not how I think. A disclaimer: this is not how I think. But I've heard that cow farts are destroying the environment. What about carbon production? And you're laughing. And I want to preface this with back when I was it 12 to 15, I was stationed in Georgia, and I went to White Oaks Farms. Oh man, that grass-fed beef. Yeah. If you have an opportunity, taste grass-fed, grass-finished beef, because it's so much better. It's what beef should taste like. But their fields were significantly visually more green than when the fence ended and just on the other side. They were the the proverbial greener on the other side. It was significantly greener, and so I say that to kind of preface that question.
Yeah. So, fun note: I've been to Will Harris, and he is the real deal. I was there for a week as part of my my tour visiting nationally recognized ranches, and there's a lot of known region leaders, right? I mean, we can name them all, right? Ray Archuleta, Alejandro, Gabe Brown, Dr. Alan Williams, Alan Savory. But that man, Will Harris, is the real deal. Now, he loves, when he pulled me to the side and grabbed me, he was like, Gil, teaming of life is key. Now, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I can explain the data of cow farts, to your point. However, I can say with conviction, regards, I don't know all the data, that cow farts and manure is not destroying the world. Now, if you look at the data of manure, it's all digestible grass already. And then when dung beetles come, because now you've fostered an environment of life underneath our feet, you're going to introduce more insects, more beetles going to come, more dung beetles going to grab that patty, roll it up, bring it to the ground, create more life, bring more worms, bring everything. It's just dung beetles create a habitat for soils, for worms, for cattle. It all includes a full closed loop system. And not only that, because they have more forage, to your point, Will Harris has a lot of green grass, right? Now think about how much each grass blade is capturing solar and attracting carbon, right? And those roots are converting those photosynthesis, those solar energy into liquid carbon that feeds the life under the soil. That life from the soil go ahead and returns and feeds the cattle. So I think, to your point, I know this is not what you believe in, but there's way more positives of cow farts and manure on the ground versus what most animal activists say, right? And all it comes to is education. But I'm here to stay and stand with the people that realize that livestock is a solution to climate change.
And if anybody has any question about this, I encourage the listener, the viewer, to go check out the book, Sacred Cow. I know Rob Wolf is one of the authors on it. I can't remember the main author. But in there, he does this thought experiment to where you can clearly see how humans would not be alive on this planet, and most plants would not be alive on this planet if there were not ruminant animals, of which cows are one of the main source of food for Americans.
I agree. I mean, if you go back in biblical times, right? Jesus told us that we had to have authority over our animals and be stewards of our land. Now, what does authority over our animals mean? It's protect, make them live, but it's for us to, in spiritual context, to make a living off the animals we have authority over, right? We use them as a tool, as a resource to restore our land, but they also provide nutrition for our humans, right? It's a closed loop system. We're meant and designed to eat beef, to eat meat, if that makes sense.
Well, I'd say from a theological standpoint, that certainly wasn't the original. We were definitely vegetarians throughout Genesis. It was actually with the Noahic covenant that, by the way, a covenant not just made with Noah, but made with all the creatures of the world, showing that there are also sharers of that covenant. But that's when the eating of meat came in. Presumably in a much more cursed state. So, even understanding the eating of meat, those animals exist to themselves and are good and valuable in and of themselves. And that's why we want the highest possible care for them. And there's for those of us who love them dearly, and I can tell you that we all do, and enjoy communion with them regularly, not when we're eating them, when we're feeding them and caring for them and trying to create good environments for them to exist in, the most natural environments for them to exist in. And then we also eat them and celebrate that and want to make best use of that and to treat that sacred. Not common, not something we would throw away, but something that is special.
Yeah, and Sam, to your point, so we have about a little over 100 sheep, Dorpers, Cantanas, St. Cord mixed, and they're thriving in our environment. And at the end of the day, Jason and I and Josh, we love spending time with our animals, making that connection, even though we're using these animals to steward our land, right, to create a habitat, restore our land, but also to eat them. But during that time, from lambing from birth till the day we eat them, we're spending time with them. We're building that connection with them. It's this whole interconnectedness, and it's therapeutic. And which I argue that the hardest surface to regenerate is our minds, not our souls. Now, when we interact with our animals, it starts regenerating our minds. It's therapeutic. It's a huge deal. That's why we need to bring veterans into agriculture. It's about the soils, but it's also about the life under the sun, the humans, our minds, and which is the hardest surface to regenerate. But once we collaborate, man, stress goes away. It's therapeutic. It's just spiritual.
And you bring up a great point, Gil, too. Sam, I'm sorry. Did I cut you off there?
Well, I just want to try and get this in before we get to, because there's so many great paths that we can go from here.
That's right.
What I wanted to say is also a biblical point is, because I think the Bible points towards either keto or carnivore. And if you look at Cain and Abel, so if you're, let's say 10,000 or however many years ago, and God asked you to sacrifice and you burned fat, and let's say you're eating carnivore, and 75% of your intake is saturated fat, animal fat, and you're burning the fat, well, that's a true sacrifice. You're giving up tomorrow's food, saying, I trust you, God, to provide. And then you've got Cain over here, who is raising wheat and vegetables, which he shouldn't be doing because it's not a food source, and he burns it, and it's unacceptable in God's sight. And then you compare and contrast that next to this study that came out in April of 2020, and it said that those that eat no meat have more behavioral health issues than those that eat meat. And then we look at Cain's next behavior. What does he do? He gets into a murderous rage and kills his brother. That seems like it's a pretty significant behavioral health issue.
Yeah. I'm with you there. I'm not sure if I necessarily draw that theology off of there to that degree, but there's certainly
anybody
room
else does.
to,
This is my thoughts. Yeah,
there is. No, I totally get it. And, I think there is actually a lot for us there in Genesis for us to understand what is ours and what our place actually is, and what that looks like. And Gil was bringing up a point I just wanted to go off of. Our entire wisdom tradition, and I'm referring to anybody who shares some or part of the books of the Pentateuch as a basis for their sacred documents. So that's a very large part of the entire population of the world, by the way. So it definitely should be very much ingrained into our theology, but our wisdom traditions were very much rooted in creation and the order of creation. And actually, Gil talked about being with animals. There's one group referred to in the scripture, and that is the land animals. The humans and their domesticated animals are always considered one group. The humans are not their separate group. It's the humans and their animals. And then it's the wild animals, which are all the animals outside of the domesticated animals and the humans. And these are references that were common in those times that you'll see referenced throughout. But much of our wisdom, as Solomon would say, that screams from the streets are the observance of the order of the natural world in which we exist, and the aligning of ourselves to that, the promoting of that, and the utilization of that unto greater productivity for us. But at the end of the day, the work that we've been given as humans in the declarations of the design of this current cosmos and everything in it is that we work the soil and care for the animals, which, by the way, are the base principles of regenerative ranching and agriculture. We focus on the soil and working it by caring for animals and utilizing them in the working of it, and by our technologies in agriculture, which have to do with irrigation primarily. So, these are the things that as an animal in the natural world that is a human, these are the things that are for us. And so the agrarian conversation is always relevant. And when you have isolationism from cities in a modern world, it's all the more relevant because it's not a conversation we have as much anymore, or even have much context for.
It just hit me that what you're saying is actually taking us back to Adam's original charge, care for the land.
Yes. Yes, this was the vision of a human in the created world, and the thing that they concerned themselves, and the way, and to us, we look at it and go, well, that's a mighty, humble existence. Well, we have tread a high hubris path for ourselves unto the destruction of the earth. So I think our only path is one through a more humble existence, whereas, and the irony of it quite might frankly be that in losing the life we think gives us something, trust me, I've attained it on several levels and it doesn't. The thing that we think gives us life necessarily doesn't. And in fact, losing it unto the care for all of creation, the world, and one another, so we find it.
It's powerful. Like the movement of regenerative agriculture is actually going back towards the Garden of Eden. It's just powerful.
Hey, Gil, you mentioned a few things that I want to make sure I understand.
Yeah,
you had mentioned people need to be able to spell soil and PAL.
Mm-hmm. All right. So take me, for example, right? A guy with a little over 17 years of experience, right? At the end of the day, I don't know what I don't know. I can talk military combat operations all day on a map and maneuver troops. But if I'm going to enter a new profession, which is regenerative agriculture, I got to learn that culture, that industry. And that industry is how to spell cow, and how to move, and how to spell soil. And I think it's great because that's what veterans fit. If I can maneuver livestock, I can maneuver cattle. And it's powerful, right? But it's a culture shift. We have to break down the blueprint of our mind and relearn everything, and to include the conventional farmers, right? I mean, they have a lot of value to this world. Man, without them, we wouldn't be here. They have a lot of skills they can transfer. But even guys, 5th, 6th generation farmers and ranchers got to relearn, because they were in the business of growing meat, not in the business of growing grass. They were not in the business of sowing land. So now they got to change the vernacular, the mindset, and how to see things, right? Even 5th, 6th generation farmers has to change and know how to spell the word soil. And that's what I mean by that. And for guys like me who got limited experience in agriculture, I have to start with what's common, which is the ground, right? Because if you can make the ground collaborate and increase production, it will benefit everything above the ground, right? It starts with the soil. So what I mean by spelling soil is everything about soil, everything, the science, the data, the what it takes to restore it, everything. And I think our veterans need to start off with that first before they even touch animals, before they even start building fences, before they even learn how to drive a tractor. It's soil. Without soil, you can't do anything else. But once they get the concept of the 6 principles of soil health, the 3 adaptive stewardship rules, and understand the 4 ecosystem processes, once they understand that and what it takes, then we move. Hey, now we're going to teach you how these animals can restore land at a rate that no one, or at a speed that we want speed, right? That's what I mean by that. Did I answer your question, Sam?
Oh yeah, that's great. I love it. This is good stuff.
Jason?
When we have a time where we have some of the best and brightest, and the demand has not yet overcome them completely. So really, it's a time when people getting in right now can be taught by some of the best in the world because they're making themselves available right now. So, I mean, I've had to get educations for all kinds of things, and they're very expensive. I can tell you the education you can get in this industry is far more valuable and comes at far less a cost. So I can't imagine something more relevant for our time to want to go towards and to master, because they would be among the few that have and are mastering it, and it will become all the more and more vital to our lives and our communities. So it's a very good direction to go to it anyway, and it is therapeutic. It does help us come to terms, and even dealing with another. When we're out there with the sheep, I'll just give you an example, very practical. We watch the sheep, and it takes them a long time to become comfortable with us. And we don't make harsh moves around them, and we don't press ourselves upon them, because our coming to interact with them is as much dependent on them, their willingness and their desire to, as it is on us, if we're going to connect in that way. Now, once you do, trust starts to be gained. And we start to understand each other, even though we're very different species. And we start to understand what the other requires and how best to go along with the other, that mutual benefits being derived from them. We might eat them, but I'm just going to tell you this. A lamb would not be long for the world outside the protection of humans, just so you're aware. In the world of ecology, it is a mutual relationship. It is not one way. The lamb would not exist at all without the humans that protected it, just so you know. They would not. None of those domesticated animals would exist much without the care of humans. They're not suited to it. So there is an exchange there, and it's a meaningful exchange. But therein, you know what we learn? We learn how better we can engage with humans, with any species, being more patient to understand and to see and to hear, and to know that that might be way more complex than we think, and maybe in terms that we each don't see. And maybe we would bear along much more. Maybe we would ask more questions. Maybe we wouldn't press ourselves in such a way as to offend and push away, but instead we'd open a conversation that drew people in. To me, those are the places that the things that have to happen on the level that it has to happen within our communities and in our world, those are the terms we can learn by right now from our engagement of other animals. They're part of the wisdom tradition that gives back to us, and it's in the experience of these things. So we think this is very vital. I think it'll be huge, as we've already seen. It's huge for returning veterans and for all kinds of help, because I'm going to say this: I have deep compassion for veterans and what they've been through. I was a pastor for 10 years. I know what trauma on various levels actually do to people, and I've been a student of it more than someone who's experienced personally, by listening a lot and trying to understand. And I'm going to tell you this: we live in a world traumatized and filled with PTSD from every level that you can even imagine. It is rampant. It's a pandemic, and we have the need to reconnect with our natural world whereby we can find some kind of reconciliation to be able to move forward on terms that are a little different and probably a lot more helpful.
I agree. Like, not only that we're restoring our soils, but we are regenerating the minds of our youth and veterans to include seasoned agricultural ranchers and farmers, because the agriculture also has one of the highest suicide rates. In fact, probably above military, right? Because they operate in austere environments, financial stress, and they depend on weather. The circumstances and the stress are different, but the outcome is the same. Seasoned ranchers and farmers have high suicide rate like the military. And I think that can be solved through regenerative agriculture, right? So through regenerating our soils. And, Jason talked about a couple of things, right? We kind of bounced around the top ag issues, right? And I'll just name a couple, but I think there's a couple of top ag issues that we can solve. And to be clear, Sam, we can't solve all this. We can only contribute and make an impact slowly, right? It's a marathon, right? I just want to be clear on that. We don't got the answers to everything. However, here are the top ag issues I think we have. 1, climate change. 2, food security. 3, technology and innovation. 4, the aging farmer crisis. And 5, placement. So I'm going to focus on aging farmer crisis. An aging farmer crisis, a significant challenge for agriculture sector because, back in the day or still now, there's a stigma where people should not enter agriculture because they're for idiots. People should join the military because they're idiots. Hey, no, go to college. But now there's a shift, right? People are starting to find ways that the path to success is not college anymore, right? There's other ways to success, and I think agriculture is the number one way to serve our country, and it's noble, right? And the way we can fix the aging farmer crisis, I think we got a solution for that. Because as we train veterans, we can place them in these ranches and farms that already created a demand signal of, hey, I need help here. I'm 70 years old. I need somebody to run my ranch. Great. Let us train this veteran. They got management experience already. We'll teach them the regenerative practices, and then we'll send them to you. And they come with a full comprehensive package from our ranch, our vision, right? And another crisis is, sustainable agriculture, right? The agriculture sector is pressured to adopt more sustainable practices that reduce environmental impacts, preserve natural resources, and ensure long-term viability. This includes promoting soil health and reducing chemical inputs. We can be a part of the solution. We can't solve it completely, but our role, our vision is, as we expand, as we become established, as we become profitable, we buy other ranches and expand that way as well. And we'll buy ranches tied to municipalities, and obviously it's a marathon, not a sprint, but our goal is to expand slowly and just place youth and veterans into these roles to help move the line to certification.
I think what's amazing is we're on this precipice of, and don't take my word for it, do your own research. I'm not a financial investor, advisor, blah, blah, blah. It seems like we're on the precipice of a significant market reset. I'm saying it that way. Most people who knows what that means, it's going to get ugly, and it's going to get ugly fast. And if you have some resources available, maybe not in cash, maybe in some other type of way to preserve it through that significant reset, think 1929, there may be a lot of farms available for purchase. And for the prior warriors out there, like, there's probably a reason why Sun Tzu said it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a warrior. Probably because once you've seen things and you've done things, you begin to gravitate back to nature, back to the garden to help the mind, and this is a good way to do that. But you're also continuing that fight, because who wins the war? The guy who has the most calories, or who's in charge of the calories, because that's what war is. It's a war of calories. When you control all the calories, the other side is going to lose no matter what. The long game, the other side loses. And this is a perfect way for those warriors to continue that fight and teach their children how to be warriors, but in a maybe slightly different way. battling the elements and fighting with the sheep, but being that upstanding citizen in the neighborhood that is able to help feed people.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree, man. I love your perspective.
I think there are significant real estate opportunities that are coming up. Particularly with the instability of markets and outlooks. Just being honest, not only are they going to increase greatly in value, particularly as our natural resources can continue to diminish. And they will. There is a higher demand now for regenerated things, and the lands have soil, so it's of a much greater value. So it's not just to buy the land, but it's to buy the land and convert it where it has cascading and compounding results unto increasing fruitfulness and sustainability. So I think that also, just as a personal and communal food security, it makes a lot of sense. So, from a long-term investment standpoint, I think it's probably the safest and probably also the most profitable long-term investment that makes a lot of sense right now, at least as a great hedge. So, for us, we're looking to bring people into this industry. We're looking to help people who own lots of land to regenerate that land, to render those services, by the way, which is utilizing animals to regenerate soil, whereby simultaneously creating enough supply to be able to actually supply a meaningful, consistent market. So I think there are lots of opportunities on the way we think about our lands, and with those unfortunately few landholders that there are relational to our population. That's a very small constituency, and we will see if their intentions are good for the people of the lands, of which they, and myself included, owns large amounts of relative to the rest of population. This is where, in scriptural terms, righteousness has very much been defined. It's been defined by those who have choices and the choices that made for those who do not have choices, and the choice to regenerate land and to provide food, and also even places. We have eco retreats in our cards for some of the things that we're doing, because we believe that the reconnection with the natural world and farms that are abundantly diverse is very vital for humanity. And at the end of the day, the ecology of humans is very much responsible for the mass destruction that has ensued. And because we've almost made ourselves one of the few remaining species, and certainly the most plentiful on the entire earth, I think it falls to us, if we've had the authority to exercise such things, I think also the responsibility to restore the same falls to us also.
So, Sam, are you overwhelmed by listening to us already?
No, I'm charged. I'm stoked. I'm excited. I hope other people see the opportunity that we're on the precipice of. Go think about it. Talk about it with your spouse. Pray about it. See if buying land and being that citizen in your neighborhood, in your community, that is able to provide caloric density and nutritious food. Remember, because with the carnivore model, the only food that is the most nutritious food, the only food that has everything that a human needs, is a ruminant animal, which is just mind-blowing. That's, if I had to eat only one thing for the rest of my life, if I ate a ruminant animal from nose to tail, I would never have to take a supplement for the rest of my life. I have everything in there that I would never have to eat a plant. There's nothing in a plant that a human needs. There's actually anti-nutrients, poisons, and toxins, and all sorts of bad things in plants. That's why God gave us these walking little factories that make edible food for us that can digest that, because their digestive tract is so different than ours.
And I would say an animal that had fed on the great diversity of forage it was intended to, and of perennials, not on a monocrop, and definitely not living out the end of its days in a lot in its own feces, being kept alive by antibiotics. Otherwise, for all intensive cases, it would be dead because of mass malnutrition. That kind of meat actually could not do that for you, Sam. It would have to be the kind of meat of that animal in its natural environment, whereby, I don't know if you're aware, beef that's done regeneratively well has more omega-3s than wild-caught salmon, just for example. We didn't even know beef had omega-3s, or if they were, it was because they've been fed on corn and because of the way they're handled in unnatural ways. That's both cruel to the animal, and it robs the end user too of the great nutrients that it could be. And why? So that we can produce it on scale at such a cheap level that no one else could possibly compete outside of our ultimate control, which is what situation it creates. And once again, that's where we as a people, to be able to be ready for that, need to be prepared to allot much more of our budget towards our food, which we have the space in our budgets generally. And some don't. And, there needs to be programs and opportunities for those also to gain access to nutrient-rich food. It's not something that should only be for the elite, but I can tell you this, in our enterprises, we are focusing on the elite who can pay for it right now and fund those things, but our intentions and our actions are always to make the farmer and the rancher a proper beneficiary and to cut middlemen out and to cut mass profiters at the top out, because we believe food is such a thing that doesn't really allow for mass profiters at the top of it. There's too much of our life wrapped up into it, and there's way too much right taken as to what we feel like we can do to turn a profit for food under the guise of to save the world. Those have not worked out so well, and I would question on the level of money that was spent and what it was to, the intent of it in the first place, at least on some level. I think for us as people, this is a great revolution that does, at the very beginning, start to deal with our choices and understanding the weight of those choices and the weight they are for the world that our children and our grandchildren are going to grow up in. I think when we consider them on those terms, it's a small price to pay. When we know that the increase in that budget is going to the good of the farmers and ranchers producing this and not in an exorbitant way, and that it's also not going in an exorbitant way to someone else who financed the whole thing with mass equipment and destructive processes to do it in one place in the world and supply the entire world at great cost and peril. That's a crazy model, by the way. But from people in your region that are deeply committed to you and that you go and visit and might know personally and are very connected to, I think if that's what we know our money is going to and it's enriching our lives, we start thinking differently about the value of our food. Add to it 70% more nutrient density, which you have to start thinking of your food in much smaller portions at that time, and to understand the value you're actually getting there. Food is done by weight and all genetics, by making it as big as we can so we can show a price per gram or a price per ounce or a price per pound. We need a price per nutrient particulate, probably, because at the end of the day, that is measuring the true value. The diversity of that and the density of those nutrients is the true value there. The over and abundant, the cascading compounding value attaches to the community when we reconnect that loop.
It's powerful, Sam. And I can tell your light bulb went on when Jason said that grass-fed, grass-finished beef has more omega-3s than conventional beef. It's powerful, and it has more ALA, which is a type of omega, than salmon and fatty fish, which helps with heart disease and prevention. And when he said that, I can tell your light went off. It's like, because it's that powerful. If it's truly grass-fed and grass-finished, but you're right. It starts. It's healing. all forms.
I do want to throw a little caveat in there, and I encourage the listener, go listen to or read Sacred Cow. Rob Wolf is one of the authors in there, and he started the book with the preface that grass-fed, grass-finished is the best, and it is better than grain-finished or grain-fed, grain-finished. But that difference is so minimal that he says in the book he'd rather just people eat meat than eat pretty much anything else. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. Yeah, grass-finished, grass-fed is better. By far, it's better. But that difference is so minimal that I'd rather people eat beef than eat pretty much anything else in the big box store.
I got to make a distinction, though, there, Sam, because there certainly are some now. When we talk about regenerative grass-fed, you're talking about some very specific practices, and I'd like to make a distinction between grass-fed and regenerative grass-fed. Grass-fed still uses these practices of releasing animals on large swaths where they're free to go and roam and select what they eat. And so we have to use antibiotics. We have to do all these things. What we're trying to do, and Alan Savory, you mentioned, he really was a major developer of these things. But what we're trying to do is mimic natural worlds in which they existed, where predators would have given them pressure. And so it would have looked more like mob grazing. Now, I'll tell you what happens when you mob graze. You actually force the animal through competition is forced to eat a greater diversity of all of the vegetation. And in fact, you're planting perennials and creating a very diverse mix of them. And they're only eating at the time when that plant, because you're controlling it, when that plant gets all of its nutrients up in the very ends is right when you're releasing them to go eat, and they only take the top. So they're getting massive, very rich, dense, full of nutrition, which doing grass-fed, quote, is not the same thing at all. And I would suspect that if you compared grass-fed in that term to lot-fed, it probably would be close. However, if you got regenerative beef and compared it, it would be radically different.
It would.
Yeah, I've never heard that comparison.
And it's hard to make these distinctions because there's so much. Every word we try to use becomes a marketing word to get people to buy more. And if it's popular, we make it a marketing word, which makes it no longer relevant as a word of real distinction. We live in a very difficult time when it comes to nomenclature and assigning meaning to the signs that we're using for it, our words, and so it's a difficult time to understand what we are. And you've mentioned Will Harris's place. That's what my family eats. So that's what we eat is White Oak Farms. And
it's delicious.
Until we're producing enough
delicious
for me to eat our own, we will be eating Will Harris's. But we support others too. There's the Double P Ranch in Oklahoma as well. So Eric and Kim Penner. And so, we want to support all of those because the same is true for theirs. High nutrient density. They might not be as far down the road. They are certainly exercising all of those principles in a very real way. So, just to make the distinction, because there definitely is one between those.
Yeah.
And in taste, I'll add to that too. Grass-fed that's not regenerative, very tough. And not near as flavorful. And even the regenerative meat will be a little tougher. They're not fatting it on corn, but you come to eat it differently. When we're eating a steak, as I tell my wife, you know how to cut steak. How do you cut a brisket? Against the grain. Well, when you're eating regenerative meat, you cut thin strips against the grain. Why? Because it's not really chewy anymore because you've already broken it down by the direction that you cut. And so we as humans have to become a little more crafty than what McDonald's might require of us in the consumption of our food. We'll actually have to understand it and the best way to wield tools even in consuming it.
Yeah, one thing I was really impressed with White Oaks Farms is I went there, this is maybe somewhere between 12 and 13, and they just took us on a tour. Like, they just took us where they slaughter, they took us in where they were hanging the meat, and it's like they didn't know us from Adam, they didn't know we were not, covertly recording things to blast it, but they were just such genuine, honest people, and that just and clean. Man, where they slaughtered and hung the meat, it was so clean that we could just show up anytime, and they just, hey, look around, this is what we do. And I'm not saying they're going to do that today. Don't expect that today. Today is a different world than back then, but it's just they were good, wholesome people.
They
Gil,
are.
sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, you're good. They were all inclusive people. I mean, I was even offered a job opportunity to be over there. That's how inclusive they are. They gave me a tour on the second day. Gil called me. I got a job for you. That's how they are, and that's what Jason and Josh trying to mimic, is to be all inclusive, right? Because we're not hiring for skill. We are hiring for enthusiasm, a burning desire to restore our land, right? And how to connect with people. We can train skill later. Josh and I, Jason and I, hey, you know how to build a fence? Who cares about love and passion? I can teach you how to build a fence. And this is how you spell soil, by the way. Regen. That's easy. It's hard to get people that have the work ethic, that know how to operate in a team. That's hard, and that's a tangible item that is not found on a report card or a resume. And if you focus on resumes or black and white sounds good on paper, and then day two when stuff hits the fan, they don't know how to operate. They don't know how to rely on their teammates. They lose enthusiasm. They get stressed out. Like, you're not the guy, because that means you never had conviction in restoring our land. Those are the people we're looking for. And Will Harris, to your point, that's why he loves being all inclusive, because he is always assessing people. He is always assessing people because he wants the right people on his team, and that's what we're about too. So what other questions you got, Sam? It looks like we gave a lot. Hopefully not overwhelmed, because our team thrives on the 3Ds: dynamic, divergent, and diverse. And by the way, one of the soil health principles is diversity. Diversity in livestock, diversity in cover crops. But we have diversity in our teammates. And we probably will scare most people, because we operate in a tempo that is too fast. But we have a dynamic and diverse team. And it took a lot when I first met these two individuals. They're very dynamic, very diverse. I will have to walk away a little bit and do a clarity break, mental break, like, all right, what just happened here? And you realize they're just too passionate. They're too dynamic, and they want to restore at a rate that makes most people uncomfortable. So you better get on the train or get off the train, because we're going towards direction, and we're going to do it. We're going to regenerate America in the minds of our youth and veterans. And it's great. And you can get. I was never addicted to people, but I'm addicted to Josh and Jason, to the team. It's weird. It's a weird thing to say, but it's true. And I'm not saying that because he's watching me and assessing me, but I'm speaking the truth here. And that's what we need, right? It's connecting with people. Having high emotional intelligence and bring people together to one cause, right? That's why I hate we have so many different churches. It's not us and them, it's one. And
Right.
That's what our team is about. We're one.
Do both of y'all have a few minutes? Because I do have a question that I heard Gil mention before, but I want him to say it. You have a few minutes?
I have all the time, brother. Sam, we're on your show.
Okay. Well, because I want to be respectful of your time. I know y'all are busy men. You had mentioned that there was a rancher somewhere that changed the rain patterns on his land. Can you talk about that a bit?
Oh, yes.
That's like,
man,
wow.
It's so exciting. I mean, Jason might want to do this too, because anytime we get the opportunity to talk about this guy, we're all about it. I'll talk about a little about it. So Alejandro Carrillo, right?
How much land?
He lives in Texas, but his ranch is in the Chihuahua Desert, right? And he's a known leader. And in fact, he's about to be in the second Kiss the Ground documentary, because he was able to convert deserted land into grassland with less than 6% rain throughout the year. So he had to manage his land based on how much rainfall he's going to get in a collected time frame. So think about how hard that is. And think about how hard it is to lead a team through that. When most of us ranchers are like, no, we're going to do it this way. We're going to add more water, more hay. He's like, no, this is where we're going to do it. He was able to convert deserted land into grassland just by focusing on the soil, right? And using his horses, donkeys, and goats to do that. It's crazy. Now he has 30,000 acres. It does take massive land to change the microclimate. Does that make sense? Like, he has millions of acres around his ranch that when you see him teach, you can see rainfall coming on his land alone. It's because he is able to change and affect the micro. Now, obviously, that's easier said than done. It takes over a decade. It took a long time, but he was patient and he had conviction on his path. And now, when people see that, they realize, oh man, that's why he's traveling all around the world. And in fact, he's coming to our ranch here in mid-May to want to educate us more again. But Jason, anything you want to add?
Yeah, what he's really done is he has closed the loop on the water cycle. So plants transpire water, which goes up and comes down again in rain. And so what he's doing is he's created an environment with maximal transpiration compared to all the other areas. And so he's starting to close the loop of the water cycle. And these are the cycles at Savory that all of us are trying to close. So energy cycle with the sun. How do we utilize and close that cycle as much as possible without mining? And I'm not making any of those things in and of, there's nothing in and of themselves that are evil or whatever else. So don't ever misunderstand what I say as that or anything political, because none of it is. It's all about these particular things and the validatable facts that we're actually talking about. It should be political, but it should be political because it should matter so much, not because of particular things that it might do here, there, or the other place. It should be critical because it's central and it's vital. That's why. And for no other reason. So, but yeah, Alejandro has done something very special, and he's one of our heroes. You know, for us, it's establishing of new heroes. He's one of our heroes. Will Harris is one of our heroes. We look at them as human beings and go, wow, what an amazing accomplishment that is for sustainability for generations to come. What an extraordinary accomplishment.
It is. It's huge. And Alejandro, when he speaks in any engagement, he said the first priority, obviously, there's a lot of focuses, but his first priority is to fix the water cycle. Back to Jason's point. That's all Alejandro preaches. Like, there's so many things we can do to fix our earth, but we got to focus on first is to restore the water cycle. Because that's what starts regenerative soils.
And then it's the mineral cycle. And that's the places where we want all the waste. We want all the biology because it needs to not go into landfills and waste. It needs to go back into producing for us. And the community cycle, and those are things that we're approaching. And you know, for us, experiences and dynamic on our team. You know, my brother and I have decade or more experience in community dynamics, having been pastors and functioned with communities and community institutions and outreaches and all kinds of stuff. And so there's just place for so much dynamic to come because really it's a holistic move at the end of the day. We need to change the ecology of humans, and that will be done holistically as well.
That's right. And as you can tell, Jason, just to be clear, we sound like professionals here. But we're not. We're amateurs, right? But we got enthusiasm, we got drive, and we do got a team that can pull this off, right? At the end of the day, all you need is conviction, and belief. You don't need to be a professional rancher to get this job done. I think our belief system will get us there. Our team will get us there. We're just going to surround ourselves with the right players needed to move the football forward. Just to make that clear. Because we still got a lot to learn. And, you know, Jason always says, even though we might be experts in our particular industries, we will always be amateurs in agriculture because it's learning. We don't really understand what's underneath our soil. There's scientists that don't even understand how many microorganisms are there. We'll never understand, so therefore we'll always be amateurs. Just to make that clear. We're learning here. We're starting from a blank canvas. So when people listen to this podcast, we are hungry. We are young ranchers in agriculture, but we have the drive to move this forward. So come join us, team. Come help us, support us, reshare our story. That's what it takes. If you want to be a part of a unified and concerted team, we're the team.
And be a part of the vision. Listen, we are not an organization who has any concern whatsoever about our position in it or anything like that. At the end of the day, we want the smartest people, the most talented people, and we want to help them flourish well beyond any place we are. I won't be able to see and realize our mission in my lifetime. I'm quite content and grateful just to be a part of it. And I remind Gil and all of us all the time when we're standing out in the field, don't forget what the reward is. And that's just to get to do it. That is the to get to do it is the reward.
So Gil, Jason, where can we find you? Where's your website? Where can we get information from you? What links?
Okay. All right, check this out, Sam. Remember when I said we're building a plane in flight? We barely got wings. We just got the engine. And Jason and I and Josh are building the plane. That's where we're at right now. But it's always good to build a team first, get the vision out there to get the team. But we're there. So right now, Operation REGEN, we're starting to create a website for that, for Life Under the Sun, Mission REGEN. It's getting there, but we want to do it right. So right now, if you do want to find us, find me on LinkedIn, Operation REGEN. Find me on Facebook. I also started and brought to existence the program Battlefield to Fur Fields from Soul Health Academy. So our team is really connected. But bottom line front, find us on LinkedIn and Facebook until we further establish. We're not going to rush to create a website like most organizations do. We want to focus on building the team. We have the team, but we want more because it's all inclusive. And we're right now building strategic partnerships with several entities. We want to do that first before we build a website because our focus is focused on the land and team right now.
We already have partner farms coming in right now with us before we have a website, because to us, the substance of the thing you say you are matters a lot more than words that you can put on a thing right quick to show a little presence. For us, we have to have a place to be able to receive people into these things in meaningful ways. So it's not just, oh, wow, that's really interesting. Oh, I'll have to swing back around to it here in a little while. You know, I mean, in the realm of opportunities, the aha moments are the opportunities, and you have to be ready to convert on those. You have to be ready to lay out a path of faithfulness for them if they should want to pursue that. And it has to be a meaningful one. So we're doing a lot of infrastructure. It's been years. We've been investing, building, and gaining partnerships throughout this entire region of Love Valley and Love County in Oklahoma. And that's coming very close right now. And we brought in some key partners and are already looking at expansion before the website. But that's the way these things go. You know, you sow before you reap. There's a lot of work that goes in before you get to reap the harvest of attention. And so, you know, that will come in its time, and we're excited about it. And the time's coming sooner than later. So we're excited about that as well.
Exactly. And doing this, we're looking for the right donors and investors that truly believe in this movement that we want to partner with, right? And if people are really interested, reach me on LinkedIn and Facebook. We'll invite you to the ranch, and we'll give you an intimate experience, because the website's important, but it's not our priority right now. And back to Jason's point, it's bigger than the website. We don't need it. Not right now.
It's timing and sequence. You know, we've created some multi-$10 million cash flows in the past 2 years as well, all of which money that funds and propels this. So we're very creative the way we think, and it's not, hey, give us your money because we want to do something. We're already doing it. And if you want to put your money in what we're doing or your time in what we're doing, we want you to know what you can expect to get back, exactly what's going to happen with that, and exactly what it is you're moving towards investing in with either your time, your talents, or your capital. And so, you know, to release that early, to go to a market, so to say, prematurely, I think there's way too much of that already, and it almost puts it in a category with the rest of it, you know. So we're trying to be patient, and it's the way of a farmer. We're having to learn. Many of these farmers and ranchers know lots of patience and what that looks like. We're having to be amateurs at it, right, Gil?
That's right. I mean, yeah, that's right. That's right. So what is you guys, Sam? And thank you for hosting us, by the way, because this is how we share our journey. It's how people get to know about us. But it's not about us, right? We want to share it because it's about the receiving end. It's about them. And they're already part of this team, whether they know it or not, some way, shape, or form. And that's how inclusive we are. And we're going to have to be to get where we need to go. So thank you, Sam, for
I want to thank you two.
Allowing me.
I want to thank you two gentlemen.
Jason.
I want to thank both you gentlemen because this has been amazing. This has been great. I'm all fired up. I wish I could get into this. My field is medicine, but if I can help my patients and my listeners and my viewers, future patients, because right now I'm not practicing, but if I can help them learn how to make their life better and make better the lives around them by doing this, by doing various things, by speaking truth to power, then that's what my goal is.
Wow, well, you just perked Jason's ears. I saw his ears move up.
I think he knows it already. We'll have to have more conversations, Sam.
Yes.
Yes,
Definitely.
we'll invite you to the event. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, man, that's awesome. That's awesome. Again, thank you, man. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Great
Jason.
pleasure, Sam. Thanks so much.
Just a reminder for everyone out there, duty uniform of the day, the full armor of God. Let's all make courage more contagious than fear. I have a new affiliate, Harvest Right Freeze Dryers. Take a look at the link below and see if it's right for you. It's a great way to store food for you and your family up to 25 years if stored properly.